I wrote you off as old and used-up material, the husband told the wife. The woman silently packed her things and handed him a folder, saying just 3 words, "Live with this now." Marjorie barely managed to drag her feet as she climbed the stairs to their apartment. She didn't want to go home. Silent and visibly upset, she trudged ahead while her husband, Byron, followed just as quietly. Marjorie kept replaying the meeting with the business partners in her mind, remembering how poorly Byron had portrayed her. "Please, have a seat," Marjorie had greeted the 2 men warmly at the negotiation table. "I've prepared all the necessary documents for the contracts marking the start of our collaboration. They're ready to take effect today. Let's review them together," she said with a smile, placing a folder before each of them. "I've tried to incorporate all your suggestions. Take your time to look them over carefully." The 2 men exchanged glances. One of them spoke. "We don't quite understand why you invited us here today. We've already discussed everything with your husband. You were the one who directed us to him, weren't you?" "Of course," Marjorie replied patiently. "I expected Byron to familiarize you with the terms. I trust you found them appealing. This deal is crucial for our firm, especially for me, as I've worked tirelessly to bring it to this stage. I see no obstacles to signing. If there's anything left to clarify, now is the time." "Byron," she said, addressing her husband, who had been sitting silently, pretending he wasn't part of the discussion, "why are you so quiet?" "We won't be signing this contract," Byron snapped, avoiding her gaze, his nerves apparent. "What do you mean we won't?" Marjorie asked, bewildered. "But we had an agreement. You were supposed to finalize the details and set the signing date. What's the problem? Everything is prepared, there are no discrepancies, the deal is transparent. I've decided that the terms proposed by these partners are not beneficial for our firm. Why commit to something that's a dead end? Think about it. Why invest in something that doesn't profit us?" Byron stated coldly. The men at the table stood. One of them remarked dryly, "It seems you two should sort out your differences before inviting partners to negotiate. Your lack of coordination isn't inspiring confidence. Good day." Marjorie watched in disbelief as the men left. "What was that about?" she demanded, her voice trembling with anger. "How dare you undermine me? You had no right to cancel the deal, especially behind my back. What made you decide it wasn't worthwhile? We worked on this for months, hoping to secure a profitable investment. Now all that effort is wasted." "I'm not discussing this now," Byron said curtly, heading for the door. "You're upset, and you won't listen to reason." "Fine," Marjorie relented. "Let's go home. But don't think you can avoid this conversation. I want to know why you changed your stance on the deal." Once inside the apartment, Marjorie changed into her robe, poured herself a glass of water, and sighed heavily. "We need to talk," Byron said in a tone that instantly put her on edge. "Not tonight," she said, frowning. "You've said and done enough already. Let's leave this for tomorrow. The deal is ruined anyway, so the conversation can wait. Tomorrow, I'll calculate how much we've lost by alienating those suppliers. I'm exhausted." "This can't wait," Byron insisted. "You need to hear me out." "Oh, so now you want to explain why you humiliated me in front of our partners?" Marjorie's voice was sharp as she turned to face him. "Fine, go ahead, but spare me the excuse that I'm just a woman who doesn't understand business. Up until now, you've never doubted my abilities, and I've always understood what's best for our company." "I'm not here to apologize or justify myself," Byron replied stiffly. "I made my decision, that's all." "How bold of you," Marjorie retorted. "A week ago, you couldn't take a step without consulting me. What's changed? Why didn't you warn me that you wouldn't be signing the deal? Do you realize you've tarnished my reputation, and by extension the firm's? We discussed every detail of this contract together last week. What changed in the meantime?" "I don't owe you an explanation," Byron snapped, his frustration boiling over. "I reviewed the offer thoroughly and decided it wasn't right for us. It's a work matter. I've already moved on. We'll find better partners." "You don't owe me an explanation," Marjorie repeated, incredulous. "We're supposed to be partners. I have a right to know everything happening in the firm. Thanks to you, I looked like a clueless, flighty woman who suddenly decided to play CEO. This deal was my initiative, Byron. When we started our business, you always consulted me. Every decision was made together. We weighed all the pros and cons, calculated every step to avoid mistakes, and succeeded together. That was the key. And now, what do I see today? Why did you put me in such an awkward position? Why did you change your opinion behind my back? I feel like a fool, unable to reason with you when you've made up your mind. The benefits of this deal are zero, Byron interrupted, his tone sharp. And the problems that'll follow aren't worth the risk. I was thinking about the firm, not your reputation. We should have discussed everything in advance, Marjorie shot back. Does this mean you don't trust me? That you doubt my abilities? Since the day we founded this business, I've never made a single wrong decision. Why do you suddenly question my competence now? Marjorie stared at her husband, trying to comprehend when the distance between them had started to grow. Memories of a conversation with her mother came flooding back from when they were just starting their business. Mum, Byron and I have decided to start our own company. Isn't that exciting? Marjorie had said with enthusiasm. Well, that's wonderful, dear, her mother replied cautiously. But who's going to register it? We're going to register it in Byron's name. He is the man, after all, Marjorie replied. Of course, but we're both investing equal amounts of money, Marjorie explained. Her mother sighed, looking at her like a child who didn't understand the world. Listen to me, sweetheart. Never put all your eggs in one basket. If, God forbid, something happens between you two, the business will legally belong to him, and you'll be left with nothing. Oh, Mom, nothing like that will happen. Marjorie laughed, hugging her mother. Byron and I love each other, and divorce isn't even on the table, if that's what you're hinting at. Who knows? Her mother said ambiguously. Life is unpredictable. Never. Well, if it makes you feel better, we'll register the business as equal partners. That's better, her mother agreed reluctantly. But I still think you should have something of your own, entirely in your name. Joint businesses between spouses often lead to disputes. Men think women can't make the right decisions. Give them an inch, and they'd keep us confined to the kitchen and home. My Byron isn't like that, Marjorie had protested. They're all the same, her mother said with a weary sigh. Mom, you're wrong about my husband. He trusts me and always consults me. Some things I understand better than him, and some things he handles. We don't compete. We're a team. Her mother shook her head but didn't press further. I wouldn't be so reckless if I were you, but it's your life. Now, years later, Marjorie realized what her mother had been trying to warn her about. She hadn't wanted to listen. Byron's voice broke her thoughts. That's not what I wanted to talk about, he said flatly. I need to warn you, our lives are going to change starting tomorrow. What do you mean? Marjorie asked, her stomach twisting. Stop speaking in riddles. If you have something to say, just say it. I don't want this to come as a shock to you, Byron began carefully. I've met someone else. I've been seeing her for a while. Marjorie froze, staring at him in disbelief. I hope you won't make a scene, Byron continued, as if they were discussing something trivial. We're adults, and these things happen sometimes. Husbands and wives part ways. I suspected something, Marjorie said slowly, each word scraping against her raw emotions. But I tried to push that thought away. I kept hoping you'd come to your senses, have your fling, and stay with the family. People say all men stray at least once. Let's call this a mistake we can forget. She forced a smile, though inside she was burning with anger and pain. Her heart ached, and she had to resist the urge to lash out. I was content with our life, Byron admitted, glancing at her briefly. But a few months ago, Alina gave birth to my son. A son. Marjorie. You know how much that means to me. Marjorie's composure cracked. I thought we both agreed long ago that children weren't part of our plan. We've been together for 10 years, Byron. Doesn't any of that matter to you? How can you just destroy our family like this? Byron grimaced, avoiding her gaze. Don't start reminiscing about how we met in college or how we've been together since day one. Yes, we were young and in love, but things change. Things change, Marjorie repeated, her voice trembling. We built everything together, our business, our home. Do those years mean nothing to you? Do I mean nothing? Byron didn't respond, and in that silence Marjorie felt the weight of everything crumbling around her. Byron remained silent, visibly uncomfortable with the conversation. Marjorie pressed on, hoping to awaken some sense of reason in him. Do you remember how we dreamed of buying a car? We chose it together and made it happen. Our next big purchase was this apartment, where we once imagined setting up a nursery. But we didn't have children, and now you're ready to throw it all away for a fleeting affair. Think this through, Byron. We've known each other for so long, yet this woman is someone you barely know. Can you really trust her? You're wasting your time reminiscing, Byron replied coldly. It doesn't change anything. I've already made my decision. What kind of man am I if I don't have a son to carry on my legacy? I need this child, and I need his mother. Our feelings faded a long time ago, Marjorie. I want something new. Marjorie took a deep breath, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. So, there's no way to convince you otherwise? You've made up your mind to leave for this woman? Byron began pacing nervously around the kitchen. You don't understand, he said sharply. I don't plan to leave. You should be the one to leave. What? Marjorie froze, staring at him in disbelief. Leave where? What are you even saying? It's simple, Byron snapped, growing irritated. I have a son, an heir. We need this apartment for my new family. Where else am I supposed to bring them? A rented flat? No, Marjorie. Tomorrow Alina and my son will move in here. Marjorie felt her head spin from the audacity of his words. This isn't just your apartment. It's ours. We bought it together equally. If you want to live with your mistress, fine. I won't stop you. If you want a divorce, go ahead, but everything will be divided fairly. We have assets, Byron, and half of it is mine. I'm not running a charity for you or your new family. I might even let you keep this apartment, but you'll have to pay me my share of its value. And no, Alina and your child will not be moving in tomorrow, not until I've found a place and had time to pack my things. Byron's expression hardened. You still don't get it, do you? I'm not sharing anything with you. The business is in my name. You're wrong, Marjorie countered, standing her ground. It's a joint venture. Any court will rule that I'm entitled to half its value. You won't be able to cheat me out of what's mine. If you don't want to settle things peacefully, we'll settle them in court. Byron ignored her, his voice growing colder. The apartment is technically in both our names, yes, but I'm confident I'll keep it. You don't need it. You're on your own. You've got money. I, on the other hand, need a home for my new family. So you'll have to step aside. You can't do this to me, Marjorie said, her voice trembling with anger. I'll fight for my share. Go ahead, Byron laughed bitterly. But you won't get anything. Just accept it. I don't want to see you in this house or in my life anymore. You're outdated, like an old model that's outlived its purpose. His tone turned cruel. Oh, and by the way, I've already filed for divorce. Tomorrow Alina moves in as the new lady of the house, and there's nothing you can do about it. Marjorie stared at him, stunned. The man standing before her seemed like a stranger. Was this really the same Byron she had once loved? Tears welled up in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Fine, she said quietly. I'll leave, but I'll take my time packing and taking what's mine. You've got the whole night, Byron said dismissively. If your things are still here tomorrow, I'll throw them out. I'll change the locks too, just so you can't barge in uninvited. Good night, dear. With that, he left the kitchen, leaving Marjorie alone with her thoughts. For a moment she sat frozen, staring blankly at the table. Then, wiping her tears with a determined gesture, she muttered to herself, Pull yourself together, Marjorie. No more tears. She stood up, made herself a strong coffee, and forced herself to eat a couple of sandwiches, regaining her composure. There's no reasoning with him right now, she thought. He's too far gone, and this new woman clearly has him wrapped around her finger. He'll follow through with his threats tomorrow. I need to act now. She decided to take what she could. She would start with the documents. Those were crucial for court proceedings. Marjorie walked into the study, moving quietly so as not to wake Byron. She felt a small surge of gratitude that she had memorized the safe combination years ago. Hoping he hadn't changed it, she held her breath and began to unlock it. She quickly entered the numbers, and the safe door opened softly. "These documents will come in handy," Marjorie murmured to herself, carefully sifting through the papers. "The deeds to the summer house, the apartment, and the cars. Don't think for a moment, dear Byron, that you'll throw me out on the street so easily. You've underestimated me. The battle has only just begun, and I intend to come out of it with my dignity intact. Of course, I won't leave you penniless, but I'll take what's lawfully mine." Satisfied, she placed the documents into a folder. What else should I grab? Closing the safe, she glanced around the room. Her eyes landed on the antique items she had collected over the years. These, she thought, are mine. Byron's new flame probably won't even appreciate their value. Marjorie packed a small brass coffee maker, a matching vintage grinder, and an intricately carved jewellery box into her bag. She also wrapped a few expensive dishes in fabric and carefully bundled up a couple of paintings. What am I going to do with all this now? She wondered, eyeing the packed items. It's best to load these into the car right away, she decided, carrying the items downstairs discreetly so as not to attract her neighbour's attention. Once everything was safely in the car, she returned to gather her personal belongings. Glancing at the clock with a sly grin, Marjorie pushed open the bedroom door and switched on the light. "What are you doing?" Byron groaned, sitting up in bed and rubbing his eyes. "Are you insane? It's 3 a.m. Why did you turn the light on? What do you want?" "I'm following your orders, dear," Marjorie replied calmly, opening the wardrobe and laying out 2 large suitcases on the floor. "You made it clear that if I didn't pack my things by morning, you'd throw them out. I can't risk losing my favourite dresses and suits. You didn't give me any other choice." "Couldn't this wait until morning?" Byron grumbled, lying back down. "I won't get any sleep, and I have a busy day tomorrow." "Get used to it, darling," Marjorie said mockingly. "You'll have many sleepless nights ahead, especially with a baby moving in. You have no idea what's coming your way. And I can't wait. I wouldn't want your new wife to feel like she couldn't move into our apartment promptly." "Fine, but could you at least pack faster?" Byron snapped, watching her leisurely fold her belongings into the suitcase. "What's taking so long?" "I don't want to forget anything," Marjorie said, smiling to herself as she shrugged. 10 years of marriage leave you with quite a bit to pack. Remember how lovingly you picked out jewellery and outfits for me. Those memories are still fresh." When the suitcases were finally packed, Marjorie carried them to the car as well. Glancing at the clock, she decided, "I could use a little sleep. Even an hour will help clear my head." She lay down on the living room couch, but sleep wouldn't come. Her mind kept replaying the argument and the whirlwind of emotions that had followed. In a restless haze, she waited for dawn, then quickly got up, got ready, and headed to work, determined to retrieve the documents from Byron's office before the work day began. At the building entrance, she smiled at the security guard. "Good morning, Nick. I decided to get an early start today." "Good morning, Miss Marjorie," Nick replied awkwardly, blocking her way. "What's the matter? Let me through," she said, puzzled. "Ms. Marjorie?" "I can't," Nick stammered, avoiding her gaze. "Mr. Byron gave strict orders not to let you in. I'm sorry. I like you a lot, but he threatened to fire me if I disobey. I have my mother and wife with a baby to support. If I lose this job, we'll have nothing. Please try to understand." Marjorie patted him kindly on the shoulder. "Don't worry, Nick. I understand. I won't put you in a difficult position." "Thank you, Ms. Marjorie," Nick said, blushing with guilt. "Please forgive me." "Don't worry about it," she replied with a faint smile, though tears threatened to spill. "These are just family issues. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle." As she left the building, Marjorie's thoughts raced. Byron isn't stupid, she realised. He knew I'd come for the documents and made sure to block me. It's no use arguing with Nick. He's just following orders. And I don't need to give Byron any excuse to escalate this by involving the police. I'll come back later when things settle down. Nick's a good guy. I'll work something out with him. She got into her car, sighing deeply. Looks like I'll need a lawyer, she muttered, flipping through her contacts. This one's supposed to be the best in civil cases. I've heard he's never lost, but his services won't come cheap. Marjorie glanced around, started the car, and thought to herself, good thing Byron doesn't have access to my accounts. I'll pay whatever it takes to get this property division sorted. Without hesitation, she dialed the number of the law firm. Hello, she began when a pleasant female voice answered on the other end. I urgently need to meet with your boss. When can he see me? There was a brief pause before the receptionist replied, Actually, there's just been a cancellation in his schedule. He can meet you right now. Perfect, Marjorie exclaimed, relieved. I'm on my way. When she arrived at the law firm, the receptionist greeted her warmly. You're in luck. Mr. Fenwick had a last-minute opening, so he'll see you personally. The receptionist led her to the office and knocked on the door. Mr. Fenwick, your visitor is here. Come in, said a man without looking up from his papers. As Marjorie entered, she noticed a well-dressed man in his mid-40s, with neatly trimmed dark hair, clean-shaven and exuding a subtle yet expensive cologne. He immediately struck her as professional and capable. Apologies, he said without looking up. Just give me a moment to finish this, and I'll be with you. Marjorie took a seat on a comfortable chair, placing her handbag beside her. She folded her hands on the dark wooden desk and took in the orderly office. Everything, from the neatly arranged folders and books to the tasteful decor, seemed perfectly suited to the man in charge. I'm listening, Alexander finally said, lifting his warm, intelligent eyes to meet hers. The case might seem ordinary at first glance, Marjorie began, feeling a little nervous. But I'm in a very unpleasant situation. She hesitated, embarrassed to admit that her husband had abandoned her. Summoning her strength, she continued, My husband and I have been together for 10 years. We built everything from scratch together. The only shadow over our marriage was that we never had children. And now he's found himself a younger woman. She gave him a son, and he's thrown me out. Do you want him back? Alexander asked, narrowing his eyes. No, Marjorie replied firmly. We're civilized people. We separated without smashing dishes or hurling insults. If he thinks he'll be happier with her, so be it. I have no intention of interfering. Alexander raised an eyebrow, impressed. That's noble, though unexpected. I'm not here for revenge, Marjorie clarified. I don't want to strip him of everything. I just want what's legally mine. All our assets were acquired during the marriage, so half is mine by law. Here are the documents for you to review. She placed a folder on the desk. I'm not asking for anything extra, just what I'm entitled to. By the way, he filed for divorce without even consulting me. Alexander studied her for a moment, his gaze lingering thoughtfully. What is it? Marjorie asked, shifting uncomfortably under his scrutiny. Is something wrong? Will you take my case? Apologies, Alexander said with a slight smile, turning his attention to the documents. After a few minutes of reviewing them, he looked up again, his expression unreadable. Your case is straightforward, Miss Marjorie. To be honest, I expected to meet yet another trophy wife looking to bleed her husband dry, young, pretty, and utterly clueless. But you're different. I don't know what you mean, Marjorie frowned. And stop staring at me like that. If you have questions, ask them directly. I don't have any questions for you, Alexander replied with a smirk. But I do have questions for your husband. Honestly, I think he's a fool for letting you go. Marjorie blushed and looked away. I don't understand what he's thinking, she admitted. The apartment was bought during our marriage and is jointly owned. The business is also clear-cut. It will have to be divided. I don't see how he expects to win. May I ask you a personal question? Alexander said. Of course, she nodded. What about your finances? You haven't mentioned them. We never had a shared budget, Marjorie explained. My money is mine, and his is his. The car is in my name, and I don't intend to claim his. My focus is on the apartment, the business, and the country house. To be honest, your case is easy to win, Alexander said confidently. I'd be happy to work with you, but this is something any competent lawyer could handle, even one who charges far less than I do. As you've probably heard, my rates are not modest. I don't offer discounts, even to clients as charming as you. Alexander, Marjorie began, ignoring the compliment. My husband isn't an idiot. This morning, I tried to access the office, but the security guards blocked me. Byron strictly forbade them from letting me in, threatening them with dismissal. I could demand entry, but I didn't want to put them in a difficult position or give Byron an excuse to escalate things. I'm sure he's up to something. What makes you think so? Alexander asked, leaning forward. I suspect he's planning to falsify documents related to the business, Marjorie admitted. He may have already slipped some papers past me. I might have signed something without realizing it. You signed documents without reviewing them? Alexander frowned. I trusted him, Marjorie said softly. We've worked together for years, built a family and a business. There was no reason not to, but clearly I was wrong. The woman paused, trying to fight back the tears threatening to overwhelm her. I can't confirm my suspicions, she said finally. I don't have access to the office right now. What seems like a straightforward case could escalate into a major conflict, and I don't want that. I'm a peaceful person, used to resolving things amicably, but I'm afraid of backing down. Byron will likely try to exploit that and play on my emotions. But I just want justice, to get what's legally mine after the divorce. I've read that you've managed to win some of the most challenging cases, she added, steadying herself. If I'm going to go to battle with my husband, I want the best. That's why I came to you. And don't worry about your fees. I can afford them. Name your price, and let's sign the contract. Marjorie, Alexander said, if I understand correctly, your husband asked you to leave the apartment, and you've already taken your belongings. Yes, Marjorie replied. My things are in the car. And where are you planning to stay? Have you found a place yet, or is someone helping you temporarily? I haven't even thought about that, Marjorie admitted, her cheeks flushing. But it doesn't matter. I might try going back home. Maybe Byron has changed his mind about throwing me out. Surely his conscience will wake up at some point. If he's serious about his threats, he'll likely follow through and change the locks, she added with a sigh. And honestly, going back isn't a great idea. The space is already occupied, and I don't want to argue or create a scene in front of the neighbours. I'll figure out a place to stay. Have you considered going to the police? They could ensure your right to access the apartment, Alexander suggested. I don't want to show up with the police and demand to be let in, Marjorie replied firmly. That's beneath my dignity. It's easier for me to rent a place. I can afford it. Alexander nodded, pulling out a form and handing her a pen. Let's start by drafting a statement for the court to demand the division of assets. Then we'll sign a contract for my services. I'll begin reviewing your documents right away. As Marjorie filled out the paperwork, Alexander waited silently. Once she handed the completed forms back to him, he reached into his desk drawer and pulled out a set of keys. Here, he said, placing them in front of her. What's this? She asked, confused. These are the keys to my second apartment. Normally, I let friends, colleagues, or trusted clients stay there. It's unoccupied at the moment, so you're welcome to use it temporarily. No, I can't accept that, Marjorie protested. I don't want to impose on you or feel indebted. Don't refuse, Alexander interrupted, raising a hand to stop her. You're going through a tough time, and this is one problem I can solve for you. The apartment is empty, and you can stay there as long as you need. Take your time finding another place. It feels wrong, Marjorie murmured. I've always taken care of myself. You're not imposing, Alexander reassured her. We're partners now, and it's my responsibility to help you. I can see you're exhausted and need rest. The apartment is ready for you. There's no food, but you can order something. There's wine in the bar and even cognac if you prefer. Make yourself at home. Marjorie's voice trembled as she replied, "I'm not used to strangers being so kind to me. My husband of almost 10 years threw me out like a stray dog." "Please stop apologizing," Alexander said gently. "Here's the address." He handed her a piece of paper. "I'll call you after I submit the documents to the court. And if it helps, think of this as part of the agreement. You're paying for my services and the apartment is just a bonus." "Thank you," Marjorie said softly. "You've been so kind. I don't even remember the last time someone treated me with such care." Alexander smiled warmly. "I'm used to protecting those who need it. Go now, rest, and recharge. You'll need your strength for what lies ahead. Facing your husband in court will require you to appear strong, confident, and unshaken." "I understand," Marjorie said. "Thank you again." Half an hour later, Marjorie unlocked the door to her new temporary home. "Wow," she breathed, stepping inside. The apartment was stunning, elegant and spacious with a comforting ambiance. She explored briefly, noting the cozy bedroom and fully equipped kitchen. "I'll order something from a restaurant," she decided. "But first, I need a hot bath to wash away the day." After placing her order over the phone, she sank into a tub of steaming, fragrant bubbles. The warmth soothed her, and for the first time in days, she began to relax. Just as she was about to drift off, the doorbell rang. "Oh no," she muttered, hastily wrapping herself in a towel. She tied her hair up and threw on a robe before opening the door. "Good evening," said a young delivery man with a cheerful smile. "Thank you," Marjorie replied, taking the bags and heading to the kitchen. As she ate, she realized just how hungry she was. The food was delicious and she found herself savoring every bite. "I need to stop," she chuckled, feeling full at last. Marjorie carried her tired body to the bedroom, stretched out on the bed, and sighed. "This is exactly what I needed," she murmured. Within moments, the exhaustion of the day overtook her, and she fell into a deep, peaceful sleep. Marjorie woke up groggy, unsure how long she had slept. Twilight painted the evening sky, and she stretched luxuriously, murmuring, "How wonderful. I could stay here forever without a care in the world." But as reality set in, she sighed. "Enough lying around. I've slept through the evening." She swung her legs out of bed, determined. "I need to go back home and see what's happening. Maybe I've overreacted. What if Byron has had second thoughts? People make mistakes, it happens. If he wants to apologize, I won't judge him. There's so much history between us." She quickly freshened up, grabbed her keys, and headed out. When Marjorie arrived at the apartment building, she parked her car and looked up at the window. Light spilled from within, confirming someone was home. She climbed the stairs and instinctively tried to insert her key into the lock, but it wouldn't turn. So he did change the locks. A pang of bitterness swept through her, but she steadied herself and pressed the doorbell. Listening closely, she heard nothing but silence. She rang again, this time knocking softly, then louder. Finally, the door opened, revealing a young woman. The stranger had loose platinum blonde hair, unnaturally thick lashes framing her brown eyes, and bright lipstick that clashed with her delicate features. She wore a silk robe barely covering her long legs and exuded a mixture of boldness and annoyance. "What do you want?" she barked in a harsh tone, contradicting her fragile appearance. A cigarette smoldered between her fingers. Marjorie's thoughts raced. She smokes. Classy. She kept her composure and said evenly, "Hello, I'd like to speak with Byron. Could you call him for me?" The woman tilted her head, a smirk tugging at her lips. "Ah, you must be the XE." She crossed her arms. "He's not here, and even if he were, I doubt he'd want to see you." "Then I'll wait for him," Marjorie said, keeping her tone civil. "I need to speak with him, and you can't stop me." The woman sneered and gripped the doorframe. "You're not coming in. This is my home now, and I decide who enters." "This is still half my apartment," Marjorie countered, her voice rising. "I have every right to be here." "Not anymore," the woman snapped. "Byron said you're done with this place. It's mine now, so leave." Marjorie exhaled sharply, trying to de-escalate. Look, I don't want to argue. Just tell me when he'll be back and I'll leave. The woman shrugged, clearly unbothered. I don't know and I don't care, but you're not hanging around here all night. Fine, Marjorie replied, but if you think you can shut me out entirely, you're mistaken. I'll get a court order if I have to. Go ahead, the woman taunted, but don't expect Byron to care. He's moved on, and so should you. She flicked her cigarette ashes onto the floor. He's mine now, and trust me, he's very satisfied with his choice. She chuckled darkly. Not that you'd know what that's like. Marjorie's face flushed, but she forced herself to stay calm. I'm not here to discuss personal matters. Let's keep this civil. Civility? The woman laughed. Coming from you? You're the one banging on the door like a lunatic. Face it, Byron doesn't want you anymore. Marjorie clenched her jaw but refused to be provoked. Instead, she studied the woman carefully and asked, How old is your son? The woman raised an eyebrow, suspicious. What's it to you? Just curious, Marjorie replied. Answer the question. 8 months, the woman said with a huff. Why? No reason, Marjorie said, her lips curling into a knowing smile. It's just interesting. Byron must have been planning this for a while. What are you getting at? The woman's eyes narrowed. You think you're clever, don't you? Well, Byron's staying with me. Get used to it. Marjorie stepped back, her voice calm but pointed. You might want to think about what that says about him. Betrayal has a funny way of repeating itself. One day, Byron might see more than just your body. He'll see your soul. And when he does, I doubt he'll like what he finds. Don't try to scare me, the woman shouted, her confidence wavering. Byron's mine. Always will be. Marjorie turned and walked toward the elevator. We'll see, she said over her shoulder. Good luck holding on to him. You'll need it. The door slammed behind her and Marjorie allowed herself a small smile. Let her deal with Byron's true nature, she thought. I have bigger battles to fight. Marjorie was startled awake by the sound of her phone ringing. Good morning, Marjorie, came Alexander's calm voice on the line. I've submitted your case to the court, and the first hearing is scheduled for next week. Thank you, Marjorie replied, her voice still rough from sleep. A summons has been sent to Byron. Be prepared for anything, even provocations, Alexander advised. She chuckled faintly. Byron isn't the type for that. I wouldn't be so sure, Alexander said gravely. He betrayed you, and people desperate to hold on to assets can go to extremes. Judging by his recent behavior, I suspect the influence of his new partner. Marjorie sighed. I did speak with her. Why? Alexander sounded concerned. That could antagonize Byron and make the division process even more difficult. I didn't think about that, she admitted. But he hasn't called to complain, so maybe Alina didn't tell him about my visit. We'll see. The week passed quickly. On the day of the hearing, Marjorie arrived at the courthouse feeling a mix of anxiety and resolve. Don't worry, Alexander said reassuringly, gently taking her hand. There's nothing to be nervous about. Today, the court will simply hear both sides and make a decision. I don't understand why Byron isn't here, Marjorie said, scanning the room nervously. We still have a few minutes, Alexander replied. Court is in session, announced the clerk, and everyone stood as the judge entered the room. The hearing is postponed due to the absence of the defendant, the judge declared. What does this mean? Marjorie whispered to Alexander, confused. It means Byron is trying to delay the process, he explained. But it's not a problem. He can't avoid this forever. Whether he likes it or not, the assets will have to be divided. It'll just take more time. Marjorie's shoulders slumped. What should I do in the meantime? She asked, discouraged. Wait, Alexander said gently. You have a place to stay and you're not in financial trouble. Use this time to rest. When was the last time you took a break? Marjorie smiled wistfully. Byron and I were planning a trip before everything fell apart. We always travelled together once a year. Perfect, Alexander said brightly. Take a trip. Change your surroundings. It'll do you good, even if it's just for a few days. I wish this would all just end already, she sighed. I feel so guilty imposing on you. You gave me a place to stay, but now the case is dragging out. Marjorie, Alexander said firmly, don't feel guilty. You'd do the same for me if the roles were reversed. You're more than a client. You've become a true friend. Marjorie blushed, looking away. Thank you, she murmured. I'll visit a friend for a few days. Great idea, Alexander said with a smile. Go, recharge, and don't worry about anything. I've got everything under control. Marjorie's weekend flew by, and she returned feeling more determined than ever. Alexander's support, even from a distance, had been a source of strength. At the next hearing, Alexander greeted her warmly as they entered the courtroom. Byron is here, he informed her. He's even in good spirits. Let's hope this session concludes the matter. Byron entered the courtroom with his lawyer. The judge took her seat, and the clerk announced, "Court is in session. We are hearing a case regarding the division of marital assets." After Alexander presented Marjorie's case, the judge addressed Byron. Mr. Byron, the documents indicate that all assets were acquired during the marriage, which entitles each spouse to half. No evidence has been presented to contest this claim. What is your objection? Byron stood and cleared his throat. Your Honour, while the law may entitle my ex-wife to half, she's alone. I have a family, a son. I ask the court to consider this. What does Marjorie need the apartment for? Who will inherit it? Some distant uncle or her lover? I don't want the assets we built together falling into the hands of a freeloader. I can manage the property better, even her share. I don't want her to become a victim of some scoundrel. Mr. Byron, the judge interrupted sternly. The court is not interested in your personal grievances. The law requires you to either transfer property to Marjorie or provide monetary compensation. Your emotional arguments are irrelevant. You don't understand, Byron exclaimed, growing heated. Why should I have to give her anything? She has enough money to buy whatever she wants. I'm the one who waited 10 years for a son. Do you know how it feels to be deprived of an heir? I've suffered enough. Marjorie sat quietly, gripping the strap of her leather bag tightly, as Byron's voice echoed through the courtroom. Alexander leaned over and squeezed her cold hand. Stay strong, he whispered. This isn't the worst you'll hear today. Mr. Byron, the judge said firmly, cutting off his tirade, your arguments are purely emotional. The facts support the plaintiff's claims. Please take your seat. Regarding the apartment and the country house, the division is clear. Now let's address the shared business. Alexander stood. The business was established jointly after the marriage. As soon as the defendant filed for divorce, he barred my client from accessing the office, effectively depriving her of her share of the business and its income. Byron's lawyer rose and interjected. Your Honour, my colleague appears to be misinformed. According to this document, he said, holding up a paper, Ms. Marjorie voluntarily transferred her share of the business to Mr. Byron. He handed the document to the judge. As you can see, this is a legally binding agreement. He placed the documents before the judge. These papers clearly show that as of today, the co-owner of the business is Gideon Renshaw. Marjorie Iverson has no legal ties to the company, as she is no longer my client's wife. As such, she has no right to access the office, which is private property. The defendant is fully within his rights to prohibit her entry. This can't be true! Marjorie shot up from her seat. I never signed any such documents, she exclaimed, turning toward Byron with disbelief. Did you forge my signature? Why, dear, of course not, Byron sneered. I'd never stoop so low. And why would I? You willingly signed away your share of the business. As managing director, I simply appointed Gideon as co-owner in your place. Any handwriting analysis will confirm the documents are genuine. If you've conveniently forgotten signing them, that's not my problem. You scoundrel, Marjorie shouted, her voice trembling with anger. You tricked me into signing those papers. I'd never willingly give up my share. Did you hear that, Your Honour? Byron's voice cracked, as if on the verge of hysteria. "She's insulting me in court. I demand this be noted in the record. I also request that she be fined for this behavior. She's defaming me in front of witnesses. This is precisely why I left her. She's always blamed me for everything." "Sit down," the judge commanded sternly, her glare silencing Byron as he reluctantly sank back into his chair. Then, turning her gaze to Marjorie, she said, "You are issued a warning. One more outburst, and there will be consequences." "A warning?" Byron erupted again, slamming his hands on the table. "Meanwhile, she gets to insult me publicly with no repercussions? I won't stand for this. I'll file a complaint." "Enough!" The judge's icy stare froze him mid-rant. "If you don't stop this tantrum, I'll have you removed from the courtroom." "Mr. Fenwick," she said, addressing Marjorie's lawyer in a calm, measured tone, "do you have anything to add?" "My client insists that she never signed such documents," Alexander responded firmly. "I have no reason to doubt her. Therefore, I request a handwriting analysis to verify the authenticity of the signature. My client believes her signature may have been obtained under false pretenses." "Marjorie Vladimirovna," the judge said, her neutral tone betraying a flicker of sympathy, "what can you clarify about this disputed matter?" "Your Honor," Marjorie began, her voice unsteady, "I couldn't have signed those papers willingly. Starting this business was my idea, and we built it together over the years. It's my sole source of income. Giving up my share would be like cutting off my right hand." "Did you ever plan to transfer management of the business to your husband?" the judge inquired. Marjorie hesitated, recalling a conversation from a few months ago. Byron had tried to persuade her to sign over management rights to him. "We discussed it," she admitted, "but I refused. I found it odd that he was so insistent, but I never imagined he would use my trust against me. It's clear now that he was planning to exclude me all along and was just waiting for the right opportunity." "Well," the judge said, surveying the courtroom, "I'm ordering a recess. The plaintiff's request for a handwriting analysis is granted." She banged the gavel, signalling the session's end. As people began filing out, Byron leaned toward Marjorie with a smug grin. "You'll never prove anything," he hissed. "You might get the apartment and the country house, but the business? Forget it. And don't count on getting your compensation anytime soon. I'll drag this out for as long as I can." "I didn't think you could sink so low," Marjorie replied, her voice steady but pained. "It's a shame I only see your true colours now." "Don't lose hope," Alexander said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder as they left the courthouse. "We'll keep fighting." "No, Alexander," Marjorie said, her exhaustion evident. "He's probably right. He must have slipped those papers in with a stack of others I signed without reading. It's my fault. I trusted him completely. The signature is mine, and there's no denying it. He wouldn't be this brazen if he wasn't certain of his position." "Who is this Gideon?" Alexander asked. "Where did he come from?" "He's a friend of Byron's," Marjorie explained. "I can only guess what Byron told him about my so-called decision to transfer my share." "It's possible Gideon doesn't even realize he's been dragged into this mess," she added. "But today I saw a different side of Byron, a side capable of anything." They reached their cars and Alexander paused. "Marjorie," he said, "how about we grab a coffee? We can discuss our next steps." Marjorie's face lit up slightly. "I'd like that. Honestly, I don't want to be alone right now. Your support means a lot to me." They found a quiet cafe and sat down with steaming cups of coffee. "Alexander," Marjorie said after a moment of silence, "maybe I should just let the business go. I'm tired of fighting. Byron will return the money for the apartment and the country house, so I won't be left out on the street. I don't want to see him ever again. Let him keep the business. I'll start fresh. I've built something from nothing before. I can do it again." "You're sure?" Alexander asked, studying her face. "I'm strong," Marjorie said with quiet determination. "And I have plenty of ideas. I don't need anything else." "Marjorie," Alexander began hesitantly, "I've been meaning to suggest wrapping up the case. But you know I'm willing to go to great lengths for your happiness, even if it means seeing this through to the end. That said, I have to admit the odds of winning are slim. We don't have any witnesses who can confirm Byron deliberately tried to steal the company from you. And even if he discussed his plans, it was likely with his lover, who wouldn't betray him. She'd be cutting off the branch she's sitting on. But I won't give up. Your husband has crossed a line. He hesitated, looking troubled. There's something else, he finally said. Something beyond the business. I've been debating whether to tell you, but I think I have to. You'd find out eventually, but it's better if you hear it from me. It might soften the blow. What is it? Marjorie asked, her voice laced with apprehension. I thought losing the business was the worst thing that could happen. What else is there? Alexander looked at her earnestly. Have you noticed anything unusual recently? A strange atmosphere around you? Have people been acting differently, asking odd questions? Marjorie frowned, sifting through her memories. Now that you mention it, yes. My friends have been avoiding me as if I'm contagious or like I owe them money and refuse to pay it back. Well, it's not the latter, Alexander said with a dry chuckle. Which leaves the first option. I think I know why. What do you mean? Marjorie asked, her anxiety growing. It's Byron, Alexander said grimly, carefully choosing his words. He's been spreading disgusting rumours about you. Rumours? Marjorie's eyes widened in disbelief. There's nothing in my life I'd ever need to hide. You're underestimating your ex-husband, Alexander said. He's telling people that you cheated on him early in your marriage. I cheated? Marjorie's voice rose. That's absurd. No one will believe that. Byron had no reason to doubt my loyalty. Some people are gullible enough to believe it, Alexander replied. But that's not the worst of it. He's also claiming that the reason you don't have children is that you became pregnant by a lover and had an abortion to cover it up. According to him, that's why you're now infertile. Marjorie gasped, utterly shocked. That's a complete lie, she exclaimed. Byron was my first and only man. Why would he say something so vile? He knows better than anyone what I went through, all the doctors I consulted. They couldn't find anything wrong. Sometimes it just happens. And I was always faithful to him. Tears welled up in her eyes as she turned to Alexander. Taking his face in her hands, she stared deeply into his eyes for a moment before suddenly kissing him passionately. Marjorie, I'm all for this, but... Alexander stammered, looking at her in confusion. Care to explain? Thank you, Marjorie said with a smile, letting him go. You just opened my eyes. I never thought I'd stoop to Byron's level, but now I have no doubt. I'll fight him with his own methods. What are you planning? Is it dangerous? I can help, Alexander offered. Tomorrow I'll meet with Byron and settle this once and for all, she said resolutely. And after that? After that, we'll start something new. Our story. Alexander took her hand, his gaze steady. Are you serious about us? Absolutely, Marjorie said softly. You've become very dear to me, the only person I can trust right now. Then how about we head to my place? Alexander asked, his eyes burning with newfound passion. Not this time, Marjorie said with an apologetic smile. I need to prepare for my meeting with Byron. I think it'll be a painful one for him. Rising to her feet, she added, Walk me to my car? It's been a tough day and I need some time to clear my head. Back at the apartment, Marjorie searched through her belongings until she found a folder containing important documents. Sitting on the couch, she flipped through the papers, deep in thought. After a few minutes, she made a decision, stuffed the folder into her bag, and called Byron. We need to meet tomorrow, she said. What do you want from me? Byron growled. Hoping I'll give the company back? Forget it, it's mine now. You should be satisfied with what you've already gotten. There's nothing left to discuss. I've moved on, and you should too. Calm down, Marjorie said, her tone firm. I'm not asking for anything else. Then why meet? Byron snapped. I don't want to waste my time on pointless conversations. You're nobody to me now. Believe me, Marjorie replied, her voice steady. This is important. It's in your best interest to come. I wouldn't be interrupting your family life if it weren't serious. Fine, Byron muttered. We'll see what's so important. But don't think you'll guilt me into anything. I know you too well. I have no intention of convincing you of anything, Marjorie said coolly. We'll talk. It won't take long. After hanging up, she headed to the bathroom, standing under the hot shower for what felt like ages, as if trying to wash away the weight of the day. The moment she closed her eyes, sleep overtook her. The next day, Marjorie sat on a bench in a small park beneath a sprawling lilac bush, waiting for Byron. Once this place had been theirs, a spot filled with shared memories. She noticed him approaching from afar and raised a hand in greeting. "What is it?" he asked curtly, stopping in front of her. "Picking this spot wasn't random, was it? Trying to stir up old feelings? Don't bother. It won't work." "No," Marjorie said, shaking her head. "You flatter yourself too much. It's quiet here. We won't be disturbed, and we can talk in peace." "Talk all you want," Byron said with a sneer. "My past with you is a failure I'm happy to leave behind. For the first time, I'm truly happy. I have a woman I love, and the son I've dreamed of for years. You have no chance of persuading me otherwise. For my child's future, I'd do anything, even forge documents. You won't be able to prove a thing." "It's a shame you've become so self-absorbed," Marjorie replied calmly. "Greed and bitterness have blinded you completely. You've painted a picture of me that's far removed from reality. But I didn't come here to appeal to your conscience. It's long been lulled to sleep by your new family life. That's irrelevant now. I came here to give you this." She extended a folder toward him. "What's this?" he asked suspiciously. "Remember about 5 years ago when we went to the clinic to figure out why we couldn't have children?" "Of course," Byron replied, his brows furrowing. "We both had tests done, like the doctor suggested. They told us the issue was with you. We even tried treatment, but it didn't work." "Yes," Marjorie said, placing the folder on the bench beside her. "It's all there. I loved you too much back then, Byron. The truth is, the problem wasn't with me. It was with you. You're infertile." "You're joking," Byron snapped. "That's impossible. The doctors said it was you." "They said that because I asked them to," Marjorie replied, her voice steady. "I couldn't bear to see you blame yourself or hurt your pride. I took on the burden of responsibility for your sake. At the time, I thought the sacrifice was worth it." "No, I don't believe you," Byron spat. "I have a son. How do you explain that? If I'm infertile, who is he?" "That," Marjorie said, shrugging, "is a question for your new wife. The documents are all here. Read them whenever you like. I have no reason to lie to you." Byron stared at her in disbelief as she rose from the bench. "You're lying," he muttered. "Check with the clinic if you don't believe me," Marjorie said over her shoulder as she walked away. "They'll still have the records. That's all I wanted to say. See? You were worried for nothing. This meeting didn't take long." Byron remained frozen in place, his eyes darting between the folder and the path where Marjorie had disappeared. His hands trembled as he reached for the documents and opened them. "No, no," he whispered as he scanned the medical reports, his voice growing louder with desperation. "This can't be true. Why didn't she tell me? Why did she take the blame for so long? It's my fault. I'm the reason we couldn't have children. I'm infertile." Gripped by rage and self-loathing, Byron threw the folder, scattering papers across the ground. He buried his face in his hands, rocking back and forth on the bench. Why did she protect me? Why did I blame her? God, I'm such a fool. He didn't know how long he sat there before finally gathering the scattered papers back into the folder. With heavy steps, he walked toward his car, his vision blurred. Starting the engine, he drove aimlessly through the city until a neon bar sign caught his eye. He parked, killed the engine, and walked inside. "Whiskey double," he mumbled to the bartender as he slumped onto a stool. "Anything else I can get you?" the young bartender asked, placing a glass before him with a sympathetic look. "No," Byron muttered, downing the whiskey in one gulp. "No one can help me. Do you understand? I just found out I can't have children. I'm sorry, the bartender replied cautiously. What would you know? Byron snapped. I'm not a man anymore. This is a death sentence. My life is over. Pour me another. The bartender refilled his glass. You're not alone in this. What matters most is having a loving partner by your side. Children. There are so many in orphanages. Adoption isn't difficult. I don't want someone else's child, Byron shouted, slamming his fist on the counter. I wanted my own. And I blame my wife for not giving me a son. And her? She knew. She knew all along, but kept it to herself, protecting me, shielding my pride, and I... His voice broke. I betrayed her. I cheated because I thought I'd finally have a child. She sounds like an extraordinary woman, the bartender said quietly, pouring another drink. Extraordinary? What the hell do I need her nobility for now? Byron snapped, draining the glass. You don't understand. Inside, he struck his chest with his fist. I'm crushed. He gripped the bridge of his nose, then slammed his fist on the counter. The glass rattled, nearly tipping over. I'm a fool, a worthless damn fool. Please calm down, the bartender said cautiously, eyeing the clearly distressed man as he removed the empty glass. This isn't a death sentence. People live with this. For me, it is, Byron replied, his bloodshot eyes fixed on the bartender. Because right now, waiting for me at home are my wife, my new wife, and my son. But the mistake isn't here, he gestured at the glass. The mistake is at home, and I need to fix it. Byron threw some cash on the counter, staggered out of the bar, and somehow managed to reach his apartment. He rang the doorbell, leaning heavily against the wall. Have you lost your mind? Junior snapped as she opened the door. You know Romy's asleep. Where are your keys? Are you drunk? You idiot. Why did you get yourself drunk? What's the occasion, huh? And why show up like this? Yes, I'm drunk, Byron admitted, pushing past her into the hallway. God, if only your son, my son, could see me now. What's that supposed to mean? Junior asked, frowning. What's gotten into you? You're not yourself. Go sleep it off. We'll talk tomorrow. No, Byron said, pressing her against the wall. We'll talk now. Whose child is he, Junior? Tell me. I'll find out anyway, and when I do, there will be no mercy. You're hurting me, Junior cried, struggling to free herself. What are you implying? How dare you? Romy is your son, Byron. You know how much I love you. I need no one but you. I don't believe you. Byron stumbled into the living room, still fully clothed. What is wrong with you? Junior sobbed. What have I done? If I made a mistake, tell me. Just stop these accusations. I've never betrayed you. I don't need anyone else. That I believe, Byron said suddenly, his tone eerily calm. Because you were too afraid I'd throw you and your brat out onto the street. You played me for a fool, calculated everything perfectly, and I fell for it. You're insane, Junior shouted, trying to leave, but Byron grabbed her arm, pulling her back. You're not going anywhere until you tell me whose child he is. I have a right to know who his father is. He's yours, Junior screamed in desperation. He's the result of our love. Don't you remember how happy you were when I told you I was pregnant? You were ready to carry me on your shoulders, and now you're accusing me of God knows what? Byron paused, narrowing his eyes. I see what's happening, he said coldly. You're upset about the divorce and the property settlement. You're trying to manipulate me. Fine, I'll forgive you for getting me drunk. Let's calm down now. You'll sleep, and we'll talk tomorrow. From the nursery, Romy's cries broke the tense silence. There, your son is awake, Junior said, exasperated. He's not my son. Don't call him that, Byron hissed. Stop talking nonsense. Of course he's yours. No, he's not. I can't have children. I'm infertile. What? Junior whispered, taken aback. But you said Marjorie had health issues, not you. You said you were fine. That's what I thought too, Byron said bitterly. Turns out the issue was mine all along. Marjorie covered for me to spare my feelings. And you? You took advantage of the situation and passed someone else's child off as mine. Maybe it's a mistake, Junior suggested weakly. Doctors make mistakes sometimes, or maybe your ex-wife is lying to hurt you. There's no mistake, Byron said, pulling a folder from his jacket and handing it to her. Look at these results. I'm sterile. Marjorie kept it from me all these years for my sake, and you lied to me, tied me to a child that's not mine. Why? I loved you. I destroyed my life for you. I thought I'd found my happiness, but instead, I gave everything to a liar. Junior flipped through the papers, her hands trembling. Realizing she couldn't deny it any longer, she spoke. He's not your child. I don't love you. Are you happy now? Byron stood slowly, his expression terrifying. Junior backed away. I'm leaving now, he said in a low voice. But when I return in the morning, I don't want to see you or the child in this house. He's not to blame for having a deceitful mother, so I'll give you money to get settled somewhere. That's all you're getting. Be grateful I'm not filing charges for fraud. As far as I'm concerned, you're dead to me. He slammed the door as he left, and Romy's cries filled the apartment. Junior ran to the nursery, scooping the baby into her arms and rocking him as tears streamed down her face. Oh God, she sobbed. What have I done? It was all going so well. Byron didn't even suspect a thing. And now? Where will we go? Back to my mother? I can't believe everything has fallen apart. She calmed her son, laid him back in his crib, and went to her bedroom. Suddenly the phone rang. Byron! Junior answered, eagerly grabbing the phone. No, it's me, came the familiar teasing voice of Kaya, her childhood friend. Hey there. Oh, Junior sighed, deflated. I thought it was Byron. You two had a fight, didn't you? Kaya asked curiously. Not just a fight, Junior admitted, her voice trembling. He demanded I leave his house. I don't know what to do. I have nowhere to go. She burst into tears. But why would he do that to you? You had such a tender love story. I was even jealous. And with the baby, didn't you tell me Byron was overjoyed to finally have a child? After all, he didn't have any with his first wife. That's the problem, Junior sobbed. He found out that Romy isn't his son. What? Not his son? Whose then? Kaya gasped. Wait, don't tell me it's Tommy's. Well, what choice did I have? Junior said bitterly. Tommy and I were together for so long, but then Byron came along. What was I supposed to do? Let him slip through my fingers? He's wealthy, with a thriving business. And Tommy, what did he have to offer? Hold on, Kaya interrupted, incredulous. You were seeing them both at the same time? And why not? Junior shrugged. I loved Tommy, but Byron was my backup plan. And then, when I got pregnant, I thought Tommy would be happy, that we'd finally be together, and he'd propose. I didn't care that he wasn't rich. We could have made it work. But he refused. Said he didn't want the responsibility of a child. By then it was too late for an abortion. Byron had always talked about wanting a son, so I told him the baby was his. And he believed me. Of course he did, Kaya said, shaking her head. He'd been dreaming of a child for years, and because of you, he left his wife, took the business, and gave you everything. What happened? His ex-wife happened, Junior spat, her tears turning to anger. She started snooping around, accusing him of forgery, and then revealed the truth that he's sterile and can't have children. Damn, Kaya muttered. And now he's kicked you out? He'll never forgive me, Junior whispered, her voice breaking. He told me to leave. I don't know what to do or where to go with Romy. I hate that Marjorie. She ruined everything for me. Calm down, Kaya said. If Byron can't have kids, maybe he'll still consider adopting Romy. Talk to him. Cry a little. Men love vulnerable women. They can't resist. Who knows? Maybe he'll forgive you. I don't think so, Junior said, her voice filled with despair. You should have seen him. He came home drunk and furious. I've never seen him like that. Stop whining, Kaya snapped. Wait until morning, put on some beautiful lingerie, set the table. Do I need to remind you how to win a man back? You can do it. Seduce him. Make him feel needed. Meanwhile, late into the night, Marjorie parked her car outside her building. As she approached the entrance, she noticed Alexander sitting on a bench, holding a large bouquet of white roses. "What are you doing here?" she asked, surprised as he stood to greet her. "I had a feeling you'd be feeling down after your meeting with Byron," he said, handing her the flowers. "I wanted to be here to support you. You're an incredible woman, Marjorie. Your strength, patience, and grace amaze me." His gaze was tender as he looked at her. "I've never met anyone like you." "Thank you," Marjorie said softly. "You're right, I was feeling down. It was hard to close the chapter on my life with Byron. 10 years together is no small thing, but now I feel free. I've let go of the past, and fate has sorted everything out for me. Byron's actions have consequences, and his new family doesn't affect me anymore. I'm just relieved my life has taken a new direction." She smiled warmly. "And most importantly, you're by my side. That's all I need." Marjorie embraced him tightly. "Everything will be fine now." Alexander held her close, his voice steady. "It already is."